Hi there, I'm Michael Hill with Canine Chronicle TV, and today for our Influencers series, I'm here with Caroline Clegg, and we are going to find out who are the people who have been most influential in her as a person in dogs. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm so well. Why don't we start at the very beginning? How did you first get involved in the sport?
So, my parents have been involved in dogs for about 40 years or so. My dad's from Canada, so he started there. And their original breeds were Goldens and Kuvas, and they met in the mid 90s and got together and had me. So, I've just kind of been completely
Born
raised.
into it.
Absolutely. I mean, my mom won a group four at Westminster when she was like 8 months pregnant with me. So, I was
So
at a
you
dog
did too.
show. So, I did too. I was at my first show when I was 2 weeks old. So it's in the family for sure.
Amazing. So when you were first growing up and at dog shows as a kid, was it something that you found yourself passionate about and enjoying, or was it just kind of your only choice and you went along with it?
No, I absolutely from the get go wanted to be just like my parents and everybody else that I saw. I got a little Pomeranian from Nina Fetter, who that poor thing I had to drag around every single ring with me after the show was ended. So from the minute I could walk, I wanted to show dogs.
With your parents in particular, were there any particular strategies in how they shaped you as a dog person, especially as a younger kid, to kind of take care of that passion and guide you in a way that's sustainable?
Yeah, so they were very, very great with, I got to have a fairly normal childhood in that my parents retired from professionally showing dogs when I was school aged. So we were still very involved and we went to shows, but we weren't going, for a 4-day circuit every single weekend. I went to Catholic school when I grew up actually. So we got to do that, but it was always my choice. I did
Mhm.
not have to be involved. They were very supportive of me when I expressed that interest and I got involved in junior handling. But if I did not want to own dogs or breed dogs or show dogs, I surely didn't have to. But they were very supportive in helping me down that path when I expressed that interest.
And then so you start getting more and more involved, you're growing up. Where did you go from there? Were there any particular people outside of your family that you first kind of branched out to, and how did that happen?
Absolutely. So I grew up with a really great community of dog handlers and different breeders and owners that I got to grow up with. So I got to learn from some of the best people in the sport that lived close to us and we got to spend a lot of time with. But from very early on, I got to, be an assistant for Phil and Amy Booth. And I got to work for Nina Fetter for a while and Lisa Betta. So I got to work for some really great people when I was younger and still a junior in more of a assistant type fashion, so I got to learn from them at a really young age, which was great. But I got to help lots of people at dog shows, covering dogs if they needed help in the setup. I always wanted to lend a hand, and just talking to different people with my parents, getting to learn so much from people that I really really admired, and that really influenced me just growing up and getting to learn from all of these different perspectives on dog shows as well.
In that time as a junior and then like as an assistant with professionals, were there particular breeds that were kind of drawing you in the most? Was it or was it something where you were kind of still open-minded and figuring out what you were most interested in?
Yeah, so I've always had an interest in Goldens. That's where, my heart kind of lies, and I love Kuvas, but it was for me a lot of the breeds that I were completely different to me. I still really have a passion about learning poodles and how to do this, the hip pieces and things like that. That's just so out there for me. It's not what I'm used to. And I've gotten to learn a
Pushes
little
you.
bit. Yeah, exactly. And I've gotten to learn a little bit from Alice and Alexander. So that was really, really wonderful. And, things like terriers. I mean, stripping the terriers every week and getting to do them up, that's completely out of my comfort zone. And I've gotten to learn a lot about it since, and I certainly hope to learn much, much more. But that was certainly for me growing up, just something that I was really interested in because I mean, a golden, a lot of things with a double coat are just going to be fairly similar. Not that I don't want to learn about that, but they're just a little bit more
Yeah.
similar. So things that were just on the opposite end of the spectrum were always really intriguing to me.
And then after this time in juniors, what was your outlook at that point? Like, and how would you kind of define maybe your goals for where you're seeing yourself going now?
So I definitely want to be involved in dogs as a whole, as a breeder and an owner and a handler as well. We have, as a family, we certainly have slowed down breeding Goldens, just have other things going on in our life. We're still very passionate about it, but we just aren't bringing the quantity. But certainly, for a breed like Kuvaz, for example, the population has really suffered over the past few decades. And so it's been a privilege to present some really beautiful dogs over the past couple of years. And certainly, I mean, technically my first, well, I have had a Kuvaz litter, but one in my house, we're actually going to have in a few days. So that's exciting. But
Oh, wow.
yeah, so that's exciting. So continuing on and producing more Kuvaz and trying to really preserve and grow the breed is something that I'm really, really excited about. That and learning from more people the best that I can, and eventually trying in whether I want to be a quote unquote professional handler. I still haven't quite decided yet, but I'm always going to be showing my dogs for sure. And I've gotten to show some, family friends that have produced really, really beautiful dogs. And it's been an honor to show some of them to the fancy. So exactly where my future lies, I'm not so sure, but
Right.
certainly involved in some way, shape, or form.
I think that's a perfect answer, though. You don't need to know the future right now, but you're well positioned in a place that gives you, options and opportunities.
Exactly. I want to make
So,
that I'm doing dog shows as a passion, not necessarily just a day-to-day job.
that's the money right there. So, with this recent, in the past couple of years, I know you had a lot of success and some great experiences with your Kuvaz bitch, showing at a really high level with, on stages of deep competition and kind of really hitting that kind of campaigning um, aspect of the sport. Were there any people who were influential in guiding you in that arena as a handler?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. One that comes to mind is when I started really winning with Monet at a bigger scale. It was at a time when Katie Bernardin was showing Ty, the giant. And I've always looked up to her and her style of handling, and the way she handled Ty was so beautiful to me. It was such a graceful way to show a working dog, but still exert so much power as well. And so I really looked to her at, a time where her and I were competing. And sometimes I was lucky enough that, it was Monet on top. And so it was, and she was always so, so kind to me as a 15, 16-year-old girl, with her little Kuvaz. So, and she was always so kind and so generous. And, we got to talk for a while about competing. And like when I had worked for Phil and Amy really, really helped me even when I was younger in juniors. I always had an issue of getting into my head far too much about, everything has to be perfect all of the time, and my dogs have to look perfect all
Overthinking.
of the time. Exactly. And I have to
Yeah.
win all of the time. And you don't at dog shows. It's just life.
You can't.
You can't control it. You can do your best, and your dog can look absolutely perfect, and that finger still might not point to you. And
Right.
so Amy really shaped me and, helping me get over this I have to win all of the time thing going on in my head. And that still rings true to this day for me. I think about that all of the time when I felt pressure to win with Monet, because I think she's great. Lots
Yeah.
of people think she's great, but it's a day-to-day thing. She doesn't
Right.
always, no dog always wins. So
I think that those are great stories. And I love how, too, it's people who were both your competitors and your mentors at the same time.
yes.
So looking back on your progression, and you still have a wide future in the sport, we know, but with your experience as being someone who was born into the sport, that kind of afforded a lot of natural guidance and membership. What would be some things that you keep in mind when you are coming in contact with either juniors or people who are newer to the sport who don't have that kind of built-in support system to kind of maybe guide them in setting up a life in the sport of dogs?
So I think one thing for us as a family we try to remember is that, showing dogs, each dog you have to kind of look at as their career. And so one weekend isn't going to define their career. You always have to be thinking 3 steps ahead, 3 shows ahead. And, this certain instance will lead to this down the road. And so
Right.
It's just kind of like, if one weekend, if it goes really, really horribly, or 2 weekends or 3 weekends or a month, that doesn't mean you have a bad dog. Sometimes dogs go through slumps, and we always said, just keep showing your dog, just keep showing your dog. It will come around. If you believe that you have a good enough dog, eventually it'll come around. I mean, will every
Mm.
dog be the number one dog in the country? No, but every dog goes through slumps. And so just remaining confident in what you have is so, so important, because
Mm.
and I could get this way sometimes, and so many people do. They have a gorgeous dog, and sometimes it just isn't clicking. And sometimes you have to reevaluate a little bit. But just because you're going through a little bit of a slump doesn't mean that your dog is awful or that they're
Right.
never going to have a future. Just sometimes you just have to keep showing your dog and just believe in what you have.
Have that persistence.
Exactly.
It's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Yes.
So many life lessons in this sport, that's for sure. Well, thank you so much, Caroline, for sharing about the people who have been impactful to you as a dog person, and as well with that great advice for other people in the sport also.
So thank you. It was so much fun.
It was my pleasure. Have a great day.
You too.